It happens every year. We watch it. We love it. We tell people we're disgusted by it, but they're all lies. There's nothing more Americana than on the 4th of July watching Nathan's annual 4th of July hot dog eating contest, where approximately 35,000 fans are estimated to convene on the corner of Surf and Stillwell Avenues in Coney Island. Now, how do we knock off that guy, Joey Chestnut? Well, I'm going to give you an answer here with Crazy Legs Conti, one of the most colorful contestants in the Nathan's hot dog eating championships. Crazy Legs, how you doing, my friend?
I am honored to be here, Jason, with the team. So great to be on the podcast. And as the great Badlands Chug says, I am hungry and focused, but I'm going to hold off on a trough of oatmeal this morning, and I'm sure we'll discuss all things major league eating, all things competitive eating, and even casual dining. I have some recommendations.
See, we're simpatico. I'm wearing a shirt that says focus. Look at that. So I'm like here for you, telepathically, kind of, sort of, getting you ready for Monday's big event. Okay, yeah, so some basic questions that you probably get a lot, but I know people want to know answers to, is, you know, a contest like this, it's big. You guys take this very seriously. I mean, this is no joke. I mean, there's money involved, there's prestige involved, there's sponsorships involved, fame. This is a thing. So how do you prepare? When do you start preparing to try to down, you know, you got to do over 70 hot dogs in order to be up there with Chestnut, right?
Well, here's a little perspective about me. So this is my 21st year on the professional competitive eating circuit. Major League Eating is the only stomach-centric sports organization. In '96, George Shea, Rich Shea, you'll see them on ESPN this Monday, July 4th. Rich will be in the ESPN booth providing color commentary. George will be wearing the boater hat on the riser on stage. I bring that up because, to your question, when I'm eating, I am truly focused on my plate alone. I don't see the 40,000 screaming fans still well and Surf, every TV camera around the world, the groupies, the fireworks. It really is a sport I wish was a team sport, but it is not. It's an individual sport. So for 21 years, my legacy in competitive eating is there's an after party after every contest, whether I'm there or not. And we do about 60 through eating in the calendar year. However, this year in my 21st year, I might be the most grateful eater still to be on the circuit. And yes, I take it very seriously. The maelstrom of meat, and those are the eaters at the center of the table. And just for your information, we, with both genders together at every contest except what we consider the Super Bowl, the NBA championship, the Masters, the Tour de France, the Nathan's famous international hot dog eating contest. And that one, the women are high lit before the men's contest. And this year's storyline, so Miki Sudo has won 8 times. She would be going for her 8th time to hold up used to be the pink Pepto belt, but Pepto doesn't even cut it anymore. So natural digestion is the way we go. Miki Sudo, an amazing eater out of Arizona, who I've traveled the world with. We entertain the military. Best thing I've done as a human being through Navy Entertainment, Major League Eating, sent over, we did 7 tours. So last year, she ate because Miki Sudo was on maternity leave. Now, competitive eating, this is not wrestling. This is not soap operas. There's nothing scripted. Could you ask for a more impressive storyline than 2 best friends, one who was on maternity leave, had her son Max with Nick Weary, another competitive eater who's an amazing eater. They're coming back, going head-to-head, stomach to stomach. Michelle Lesko is very wiry. She eats like Julian Edelman plays football. She's like a gym rat. And Sudo does this thing where she bops her hair out of her face, and they're eating close to 29 to 48 hot dogs and buns in 10 minutes. Jesus. So we're at a time in the world where we have to celebrate the female form. It's called Mother Earth for a reason. I cannot wait to watch those 2 women and the rest of the field, Sarah Reinerke, Laurel Maria, Jules Loves Pizza. They're going to be eating ferociously. There's no etiquette when it comes to eating on July 4th.
Don't you think, Crazy Legs, that for Sudo, when she was pregnant, would have been the best time for her to compete? I mean, she's eating for 2. One
You
would
know,
one would think that would be almost cheating in a way, like taking steroids.
I asked her that. I said, because she's, just so you understand where I rank, I am currently 26th in the world. But when I talk about Mickey Sudo, I am 0-7 against her. And sports people would be like, oh, you only lost 7 times. I'd be like, no, that's 7 years. I'm 0-7 years against her. That's how good an eater she is. So one contest she lapped me was kimchi. I did a respectable 4 pounds. She did 9 pounds of kimchi, and this was in 8 minutes. So when she was pregnant, I asked the exact same question. I said, what are you craving? I mean, it's sort of like the Stan Lee thing. With great eating, with great capacity comes great responsibility. Said, you'd think that was the case, but it went the opposite for her. Because she could eat so much, she was very target specific for certain foods. And then she wouldn't tell me what those foods were in case the league because then I'd be like, oh, I'm going to lose again. But this year, Max will be wearing little headphones. He'll be in the audience. On the men's side, you bring up the one guy on planet Earth who's eaten over 70 hot dogs and buns. And last year he ate 76, which I think was just a show of incredible patriotism, right? The spirit of 76. And that's Joey Jaws Chestnut. But the truth is, and I love Joey, he's an amazing human. All the hyperbole that is given to him around the world, it's true. When people joke, they're like, oh, he's let's compare him to somebody. Like, he's Tom Brady. And they say, oh, no, actually, Rich Shea will probably say, well, Tom Brady's the Joey Chestnut of the NFL. At the same time, we do so many contests year round that a guy like Jeff the Digester Esper, very quiet, taciturn guy out of Oxford, Mass, he's beaten Joey in the last 7 campaigns. They were head to head. Everything from Hooters chicken wings to I was with Jeff at Mattatuck Lions Club. We did strawberry shortcake on Father's Day, just for perspective for people. So 15 years ago, I did 9.75 pounds, almost 10 pounds of strawberry shortcake in 8 breakout performance. I came in third. I won a little prize money. Esper, and this past year, so let's call it the aging of an athlete. I'm in the fat Elvis jumpsuit stage of my career. I did 7.5 pounds, pretty respectable. Yeah. In 8 minutes. I came 7th, no prize money. Esper lapped me. He did 16.25 pounds of strawberry shortcake. Name a sport where you're in the, I'm a top athlete, and the guy laps me in dessert, meaning like track and field, you might see it. I can't figure out any sport where it was like dust fumes. Right. Just felt a spray of his eating. It didn't count against him because he didn't make a mess. So one thing to put in perspective is that sometimes I marvel at the incredible athletes, or whatever you want to call the gustatory gladiators on the circuit. I sometimes forget when I have lost hot dog qualifiers in every state, because you have to earn your spot to Coney Island. So one thing I love your listeners and viewers to know is that the next great competitive eater is listening to you right now. They really are. As long as they're 18 and they can afford lunch, they can start on the competitive eating circuit. And you go to majorleagueeating.com, you find out when we're coming to your town to eat a lot of food quickly. And it's really why I'm so grateful. I feel like Groucho Marx from vaudeville. I'm approached by people and they're like, oh, you've never heard of my town. And I'm like, oh, Bettendorf, Iowa? Yeah, I ate loose meat, what were they? I can't even remember the sponsor, but it was Loose Meat Sandwiches, which was a volcanic covering of burger meat and sauce. It didn't have a bun. And they're like, you ate one of those? I'm like, I did. I ate a lot of those. So whoever's out there, whether it's an eater that's currently eating, a guy named James Webb out of Australia ate 40 hot dogs and buns in his qualifier. No one's ever eaten that amount. We live in the golden age of competitive eating. And it's because of you, because of podcasts, because of social media, because of Instagram, because of all these things. Major League Eating has left the sideshow ballyhoo subculture and the mainstream. And I couldn't be more happy. When men and women who are going to beat me for the next 10 years, I have no intention of retiring and I like food. It's because of you. So I really owe a debt of thanks and gratitude to your listeners, because they all know someone. Oh, this person can eat. Let's get them out on the major league eating circuit.
You bring up an interesting point. I never realized this, and just until listening to you talk, is that if you were to make some comparisons, especially with the big four, with football, baseball, hockey and basketball, and I'm a sports guy. I mean, I've done sports talk radio. I've got a lot of friends that are professional athletes, ex-professional. I don't think I've ever heard a person in a sport like you, Crazy Legs, talk generically about the organization and how great it is and put over everybody else but yourself. I mean, you just cut a promo on how great your organization is. When's the last time you heard a professional football player talk about how they love the NFL? They might love the organization because they're trying to get a new contract, or they just got a new contract. But if any given day you were to ask an NFL player about they're not going to put over the NFL. That's that's admirable that you do that you love the sport and the organization so much you want to see it continue. I think that's great.
Well, I appreciate that. You know what's interesting, and I think I can kind of answer that twofold. I do love being an ambassador to the sport. But I meet rookies all the time, and I tell them, figure out what you want from the sport and try to make that happen. Because the truth is, if you're in it for money, it's going to be very difficult. You got to knock off Joey Jaws Chestnut. The notion that is a great eater born or are they made? Well, Takeru Kobayashi, who's a close personal friend, he put eating on the map. There's a great ESPN documentary, 30 for 30. It's Joey versus Kobe. Myself and Tim Eater X Janus got to kind of be commentators because we lived through that. And I call that the modern era of competitive eating. Previously in the 90s, when I debuted, Badlands Booker and Hungry Charles Hardy is now the commissioner of the league. Badlands does Badlands Chug. He'll be performing July 4th. They on their wing. I was just a guy who loved food. I was a gourmet and a gourmand. I loved good food in large quantities. I knew it as a subculture, having moved to New York, but now it's out there. So the notion that we wouldn't welcome people to the circuit when it's a sport that can only grow. And the reason, and this is the second thing I'd bring up, is that it's so interesting that food is the fuel that every athlete uses on the planet. Food is also what we commune with. That's how we get along. Thanksgiving is amateur hour. I'm going to be honest about that holiday. It's like people are like, I had 3 servings. I'm like, come on, man. Talk about poundage. Like I've eaten a 25-pound turkey that they then deducted what I didn't eat. And that's how you figured out. Sonia Blackwood Thomas, another amazing eater, she got down to the carcass. I was like looking over. I'm like, oh, get her pumpkin pie, even though it doesn't count. So the notion is, where can this sport go? We are not the typical athlete. We'll sign anything. We'll step off stage. We're in your town. I know I need to find a dive bar to have an after party, versus the more traditional sports where I grew up in Boston. I gravitate to the Celtics. It's my 21st year on the circuit. I saw the Kevin Garnett retirement ceremony. I was in tears. If you model yourself after athletes that have integrity, and I think it may be strange, but I model myself after KG. I watch his warm-up routines. I will never be the basketball player he is, but I can be the athlete he is if I can somehow channel what he's going through. And it took him a long time to get there. He brought a championship to the Celtics, but you would watch the intensity and focus. And my storyline, I'm generally very erudite, verbose. My mouth is full of food. So there is pageantry, there is costuming. I feel super honored that people have allowed me to do things in the food stuntman business. I ate my way out of the popcorn sarcophagus. Live to Survive, that's covered in a documentary called Crazy Legs, Conti, Zen, and the Art of Competitive Eating. Years ago, to celebrate the 100th anniversary of Nathan's, they let me wear a sky suit. I sat on top of a Wonder Wheel car. The Wonder Wheel is the big Ferris wheel, Coney Island, eating Nathan's hot dogs. I met the Valores family, a charity event. I said, hey, tell me about some history I wouldn't know. And the former owner would let people sit on top of the car. Now, were they strapped in? Were they not? I don't know. but I got to do something that no one else on earth has done to promote Nathan's. I risked my life. I would never do that again. I'm going to eat hot dogs on the ground. Take you if you say yes.
Yeah.
And I cannot believe some of the goals I never would have had for myself until said, Crazy Legs, do you want to be in a video game? Yes. So in Bite the Bullet, I'm a non-playable avatar, and I'm really grateful to the makers because you unlock me, and then I'm 3 floating heads in a top hat, just encouraging people to eat in this world where you can eat anything.
Yeah.
So to your point, it's not just me. I think you have to realize that major league eaters come from all walks of life. They're all different people who do this on weekends. We pay our own way to contests. We try to win it back in prize money. But why wouldn't we want to see people succeed when you watch the Olympics? And we're not in the Olympics yet. I know George Shea sent a lot of letters to the IOC. But Shaun White, I've met him through competitive eating, meaning I was on shows with me. He's super nice. And there's a guy, I don't know if he envisioned in the course of his lifetime, his sport, his act, what people used to call a hobby, or you did. All of a sudden, he's winning gold medals. And I'm thinking, I don't know what he ate before, but I'd like to know, because if we get I'll probably be a coach by then, or I'll be in the stands yelling wherever we are.
Right.
Food is the fuel that creates every athlete. Now we go into our contest empty, we leave full. So yes, I am satiated after my contest. But food is what makes us go during the day. It what unites us as humans. If you have a great meal and you're just talking about where the next meal comes from, we get to do that as our sport. And that's really what the truth of the matter is.
You don't, going back to the comment you made about the Thanksgiving, that was a contest. When you're having Thanksgiving dinner with your family, you don't eat like you would eat competitively when you're just eating normally.
Jason, I tell the truth about everything except the origin of my actual legal name, which is Crazy Legs. I don't care about Thanksgiving. I care about people worldwide having, or in America, maybe celebrating. I am in New York City. I go to a dive bar where a female is working at 8 a.m. I bring her coffee, and then I get a meal somewhere. Giving to me, I get it, but it's every day should be Thanksgiving. I know that they say that about like greeting cards and Grandparents' Day, but I'm like, every day should be Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
we should all.
That's not my point about the actual holiday. The point is when you eat a meal regularly. Like
I watch every bite, chew, and swallow of the year so that I can eat on the circuit. Meaning, it's an interesting notion. I love food. I love so many different foods, but I don't need to. I was in Miami at the beginning of the year for Wings for Wishes, which benefits the Southern Florida Make-A-Wish Foundation. The Sports Grill has 3 locations. We did a contest there, and it was. I'm trying to think of the totals. I did very well. I think maybe because they're bigger wings, I did like 87 in 10 minutes. Oh, generally in wing contests, I could eat of a traditional bar wing, like in Buffalo, we do the Wing Festival. I can eat about 100 to 125 chicken wings in 10 minutes.
Jesus. So
if I go out and somebody's like, let me see you do this, I'll be like, let me show you the technique. I'll show you the meat umbrella. I'll show you how to keep one hand sauce free so you can hold your beer or drink. But I don't need to do it. And so it's not a notion of what I would enjoy, because I do enjoy eating that amount of wings on the circuit. It's a notion of almost seeing, I eat vicariously through others in that scenario. That's really the truth of the matter. Meaning, if I'm on a dinner date, I don't want to, no woman is really going to be that impressed if I eat both of our entrees, all of the appetizers, and then finish up with 3 desserts.
Right.
A few have been impressed by that. I won't lie, but
you did say that there are groupies. We started out this conversation. You said that there are competitive eating groupies. They exist, which I find extremely fucking weird, because historically, if somebody's shoving their face with food and it's messy and it's wet bread and it's like not a turnoff. But I will tell you this before you talk about the groupies, I don't want to call it a fetish. I don't think it's a fetish. I just enjoy. One of my favorite things, and I've seen it numerous times, is I love the mall. I'll go into the food court of the mall, and I'll try to spot usually a larger woman eating a hamburger. And it's even better if she's crying. There's nothing, and I know it sounds like a gimmick and it's weird, but Nate, as my witness, I've said this for years, a large woman, like business attire, like she works in the mall, eating a sloppy hamburger, crying, to me, I'm just infatuated with it.
Okay, so I can say that I'm not a psychologist. I'm gonna say that she's there. I need to figure out the backstory. So if she's crying, she's eating her emotions. She's on break from her job. And eating your emotions is a real thing. We all do it. The notion that, you've broken up with someone and you sit at home eating, bonbons or an entire Whitman sampler, like the one that's the 96 Whitman sampler that goes half price right after Valentine's Day. Eating your emotions is an interesting notion that will actually not get you very far competitive eating wise, because the snot and tears and mucus and just the you're not in the moment to focus on your body's internal journey. So I don't deny for you that might be an interesting contest or call it a reality show. I mean, if we could get a sponsor, then it sounds terrible. It really preys on the worst of human emotion. But yeah, it's like a medley of, like, they're about to be broken up with on live TV. They then have to move to a food that they have to eat in a certain time. And then I don't know if it's a triathlete kind of scenario, maybe you have to swim somewhere just because we add the element of physical.
You're taking this to the next level. I mean, if you want to start sitting here brainstorming, if you want a TV show out of this, you just take a camera crew around to any given mall, find a big girl chowing down on a hamburger that's upset, and ask her what the hell's wrong. That's all you need.
I could get her to 49 Crystal hamburgers in 8 minutes, and she'd feel better about herself. So yeah, I don't know what that's called. Is that called the food court whisperer? But yeah, I would help her out.
The food court whisperer. That's great. Nate, do you have a question for Crazy Legs?
Yeah. Is there anything like in sports with performance enhancing drugs that are banned and everything? Are there any rules or anything that you can take that is not allowed in competitive eating competitions?
That is a great question, Nate. That is a great question. So here's how it works. You can rub Winstrol V on your stomach all you want. It is not going to help you eat more, Southside Market sausages at the Manor Palooza, the Manor, Texas. You can do things to your body that you've heard are what you're supposed to do, and that's not going to help you. It's mind over stomach matter. The stomach can fill up, the mind never can. So people have had sports psychologists. I do an enormous amount of pre-visualization. When people ask, what's the magic? I say the magic is in the mind. Now, there are things that, people will think are what you could do outside of what are legal or soon to be legal substances are legal in some states. And of course, I've seen, not on the pro eating circuit, but an amateur contest where, let's say, people smoked or ingested an edible that they thought would give them the munchies, and mostly just stand around and stare at their grilled cheese sandwich. And I'm like, you're in an eating contest. They're like, I got it. And then I'm like, no, they don't have it. So nothing that in colloquial culture, whether it's a legal substance that gets you banned in other sports, or it's a somewhat legal substance that seems to cause you to eat a lot of food late at night, it's not going to help you. And it's so there's, we have a code of conduct with Major League Eating, but people have tried strange things. I was at a Johnsonville Bratwurst qualifier in Milwaukee, and you had to come in the top 5. There were only 6 eaters. And the kid, who I like to call the fifth tenor, he had this long Italian name. I don't think he sang opera. He said to Tim Eater-X-Janis and I, he said, guys, I've seen you in the circuit. I want to avoid flavor fatigue. After the contest, I'm going to eat a brownie. And we said, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. You should definitely do that. And then, of course, he was the 6th guy. He didn't qualify because why would you bring food to a food eating competition that counts against you? So people do strange things in the name of how they think they could eat more, but if you want to eat more, you figure out your alternative beverage. That's very important in the circuit. We always dunk in some contests. You always need a beverage nearby. When I do the Acme Oyster Oyster Eating Championship, you don't need a lot of beverage because oysters have a lot of salinity, a lot of moisture, a lot of liquid. It's a contest I'll never miss. Every year they do it because I love New Orleans. Am I the once and future Baron of the Bivalve, the Master of the Mollusk, the Oyster King? It's hard to say. I won it in 2002, but I'll always be down there. My best, just so people understand what competitive eating is like, I've done 32 dozen oysters in 8 minutes. Next to me, Sonia the Black Widow Thomas did 47 dozen.
Jesus.
Jeez.
So to put that in perspective, and Sonia is a very svelte, slight woman. My buddy Dinshaw was watching from the back. He said she couldn't have eaten any faster he couldn't have eaten any faster if he was trying to fork them and put them in a closed neck jug. Economy of motion. There is technique involved. She was forking 4 to 6 oysters at a time. They're Gulf oysters. They're delicious, but they're big and going. So technique comes into play. And then to Jason's question, I won't answer any more groupie questions, but I would say people know oysters as nature's Viagra. Up to 3 dozen. Anything over 3 dozen, your stomach sticks out further than certain other body parts. So, that's a rough after party where I'm kind of sloshing around, but I'm in New Orleans.
Hey, look, man, you should, your gimmick is great. And I love that you own who you are and what you do, and it helps with the sport. I understand all of it. I'm a wrestling fan. I get it. So the groupie thing, like to have a competitive eater, your Rico Suave, or whatever your nickname is that, your gimmick is you eat a lot of food and chicks love you and you go back to the hotel room. That's interesting because it's the sweet and salty kind of thing. It's going back and forth. It's good. So again, I'm just so enthralled with how you talk about the organization and how much you love doing this after over 2 decades. I'm assuming that for the veterans like yourself, there's almost like a court. So what I mean by that is you've got some new guys that want to change the game and they're not following the rules that you guys have set. And they're not treating the sport like you feel or the veterans feel like they've been treating. There's that learning curve that needs to be dealt with. Do you guys have that where you'll pull them aside and say, dude, you got to get along before you go along? You got to, I'm telling you right now, if not, you're going to get heat and we're all going to come down on you. We're going to spike your food and you're going to die.
It's not so much that you aren't wrong in that, what I mentioned earlier about it is a brotherhood and sisterhood of the stomach, but it's not a team sport. So when it comes down to each contest, it's each man or woman on their own. But I would say I started the after parties because I wanted the chance to talk about what we had just done, to amaze ourselves. There are very few eaters there are no eaters on the circuit who I would call a jerk. In the distant view, I got to blog for a time. I got to write for a time. I collected those stories in a book that people can get called The Loneliness of the Long Distance Eater, A Competitive Eater's Diary. And largely it was about some of the problems when incidents would happen. I got in near Donnybrook at the World Corn on the Cob Eating Championship in Yesteryear Village with a guy who's since retired, meaning retired from eating, because I couldn't believe it happened. But I'm the 4-time Corn on the Cob Eating champion. So when parents tell their kids to eat and finish all their vegetables, that's where it can get you. I use the manual typewriter, left, right, left, ding. But to answer your question, you do need a purity of heart, a notion of belief in yourself, belief in your fellow competitors to succeed on the circuit. And a guy like Gideon, the Truth OG, you'll see him on ESPN. He's 6'9". He came from the college basketball world. I came from college basketball as well. But I barely beat him in his first contest to qualify for Nathan's. Later, we were in the kale eating championship of the world in Buffalo, and I love Buffalo as a city. I had technique going in, and I just thought, I am winning this contest. I am so far ahead. He was 4 bowls ahead of me. In 6 minutes, he was the healthiest human on the planet. Now, when Gideon came into competitive eating, he thought, we should be doing this, we should be doing that. But really what he learned is you have to focus on the food. Our food is the sponsor's food. They don't mind when we masticate it, when we destroy it, when we do whatever it takes to get it down, kind of a Tetris of the stomach. But over time, people have left the sport because they didn't get what they wanted. And that's what I'm talking about. Whether you're a guy like James Webb, who's entering Major League Eating, or Carbucci Eats, or you're coming from that kind of food influencer YouTube world, and you realize Major League Eating is a platform, or whether you're just a family guy, 2 guys out of Drexel Hill, Steak Belly and Wing Kong. They each have kids, but they could do competitive eating and they would exceed at certain foods that they loved, Philly-based foods like chicken wings and cheesesteaks. Will find their path. And I think that's important to note. You had said gimmick, and I'm going to reframe it. I wouldn't call it a gimmick. I know Joey Jaws Chestnut's mantra when he steps on stage. I'm not going to tell it to you because he confided in me, because I've had moments with him that he actually called out me, Pat Deep Dish Bertoletti, former number 2 eater in the world, who'll be back at Nathan's this year. He was in D.C. with me. He ate 40 hot dogs and buns. Tim Rex Janis, who used to wear the face paint, he said, I don't need a gimmick. I don't need a mohawk or weird hair or facial hair. I don't need to wear face paint. And there's something about him that I would say that the drive that he had. So I've already said Jeff the Digester Esper can beat him in foods like we eat Bake Mark donuts in the USS Midway for the Salvation Army. We eat Jack's Donut Holes in Indiana. That's a sport. That's a food that even though they're donuts, one's a donut hole, one's a full-size donut, you've got to know technique, alternate beverage, your manual to oral dexterity. But on July 4th, Joey knows that those 10 minutes are his most important 10 minutes of the year. He knows that not just America, because even though it's the birthright of our country, the world is watching because they want to see what he's going to do. So whenever somebody says, well, what's going to happen this year? I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen in those 10 minutes. I know what happens before, and I know where the after party is afterwards. But to me, I couldn't be more proud to be eating at a time to see somebody who can do something that no other human can do. And that's not just a weird human trick, meaning here's somebody who's focused not only the physiology of their body, but their mind. And that's why, I'll be in the spray zone, because how often in life can we wonder or marvel, not just in sport, but just at the human condition, and say, we're all human, we're all the same vessel. But these men and women have figured out how to propel themselves to the next level of energy.
You do realize, though, that the word gimmick is not a bad word.
Definitely. No, I wasn't.
Everybody's got a gimmick. I mean,
of course.
If you don't know anybody on these boxes here, but you could look around and go, all right, that guy with the water background, which is Nate, his gimmick is backwards hat tank top. That's his gimmick. Jill's got this, because she's a girl in a bedroom. You're going, oh, she's got this kind of porn gimmick going on.
Wow.
Then Brandon, you're like, oh, well, he's got this homeless, I'm in a Ukrainian jail, gimmick going on.
I wasn't coming back at you in terms of that. It's just interesting to me that we all want to express our individuality. That's why we're out here. That's
the gimmick. That's your gimmick. Yeah. I mean, your gimmick is, you've got a great gimmick as far as the name goes. It's catchy. And you got the handlebar mustache. You know that if you didn't have the handlebar mustache and the dreads and all that stuff going on, you would not be you. You would not be the gimmick of Crazy Life.
I'd be an actuary wearing a tie, and I'd be really bored with life.
Right.
So, I do my mustache in honor of Salvador Dali. He's one of my favorite surrealists, because I have no idea how the universe works. I just try to find my place in it. And I've had more experiences on the Major League Eating circuit. I just thought, this is preposterous. Who gets to live this life? And then that's why I'm truly grateful. I love the variance of the shows you have and the way you're able to have different people kind of give their experience, because part of eating, part of podcasting, part of writing, part of film, TV, it's all storytelling.
Sure.
And we our stories out and have people relate to them. And that's why this is amazing. So
what did you do before? Because, you said, don't get into this business if it's all about money, but you guys, especially ones that have been doing it for a long time, and you're very good at remembering the sponsors. These people have to love you. And that's what it's all about, is putting over the sponsors, whether it be Nathan's, whether it be Johnson's, whether it be whoever you just mentioned. Chestnut's a millionaire because of this. And I'm assuming you've done well.
Somebody so Matt Megatoad Stoney, I know him from when he was 19. Sam Barkley, who's a major league eating MC, and he placed somebody. We were in Singapore for the CP Big Contest, delicious foods, shrimp wontons. And I love my stomach is a beacon to the ocean's creatures, meaning if there's Rouse's crawfish, Acme oysters, any seafood based. So at the time, I was trying to give him some advice of just like, here's how you might want to be on camera. Here's how you might want to be, to mention the sponsor's name. Well, fast forward to today, Matt Megatoad Stoney is also the only guy besides Takara Kobayashi who's beaten Joey Jaws Chestnut in the current golden age of competitive eating. I can't keep track of his views for his channel on YouTube. I know that all his videos surpassed 1 billion.
Wow.
Meaning I don't get numbers, but if there's 8 billion people on the planet, mathematically 1 out of 8 people have watched a Matt Megatoad Stoney video. And that's coming from a kid who spent all this time showing what he could do, remembering sponsors' name, telling, like, he has sponsorship deals. When I meet, small humans, that's what I call kids who are under the age that they can eat on the circuit. They're like, do you know Megatoad? I'm like, I do. So it shows you where the world can take you when you opt in, when you tell your story. So I couldn't be more proud of a kid like Matt Megatoad Stoney, because in a way, you know so many athletes who've retired from their sports, and then they have to figure out what they want to do next. And the one thing about competitive eating is when we get up on July 5th, we still got to eat breakfast. Now, granted, July 5th, it's kind of the anaconda diet. You might not eat for 24 to 36 hours, but you have to eat every day. What you put in your body is important. So there are eaters who are staying on the circuit and they're older, but just because they love kind of the circuit for itself. So I do think there's something. What
did you do before this, though? That's what I really want to know.
I want to live off my creative endeavors in writing, television, film, the small screen, the internet, performance art. New York City, I got to keep the lights on. The rent is expensive. So I do a myriad of jobs. I always have. But, I'd say I think I've done every job you could have in New York. I have been a New York City window cleaner. I've been a sperm donor. I've been a nude model. I worked as a beverage manager for 2 high-end gentlemen's clubs for 8 years. I work a nightlife job now. I work a farmer's market. I always connect to the food chain. All my jobs seem to gravitate towards food. But you can't, if you want to just live off your pro-eating earnings, make a mark. There's a guy who'll be eating on July 4th, Adam Moran. He's the UK's greatest eater. And I'm going to call him the UK's greatest eater in history. I don't see anyone surpassing him. He has a channel called Beard Meets Food. He and his wife, who's lovely, she oddly enough only eats garlic bread and French fries. I don't know how that works, but that's her food thing. He makes his living from doing this, from doing 2 videos a week. He'll be out there at Nathan's. I saw him in Manor, Texas. And he was just saying, like, how do I keep up with, Pat Deep Dish Bertoletti's eating 55. Previously, he's back in the circuit. I said, Beard, you don't need to. Like, you've made it. A lot of what we do is just trying to acknowledge to people that you could be the 11th ranked eater in the world. I was ranked 11th for 4.5 years. I thought I should have got in after, I beat Gravy Brown in a contest, but the league does the rankings. I've never cared where I belong number-wise as part of my ego, because I have a unique perspective. This is an important thing. I talk a lot about, where do you want to be? Do you want to be number 1 or you want to be number 2? Well, the underdog. We all cheer for the underdog. Number two always works harder. And then the sports cliche is if you're number one, where do you go from there? Well, you either stay there or you go down. Mm-hmm. So the one perspective I'd say I have that maybe not a lot of people have is that there was Ed Cookie Jarvis, who was my nemesis on the circuit. But Eric Badlands Booker was, trying to get him. He was the number two eater in the world. And then there was, Takeru Kobayashi, and then there was Joey Jaws Chestnut. And so can you be number one forever? Not in competitive eating. So there's always going to be somebody who's literally more hungry for that top belt or title.
I find you fascinating. I find you absolutely fascinating. And let me tell you why. I'm usually really good at figuring people out. Give me 60 seconds and I'll tell you everything there is to know about them. I can't do that with you. Like, I'm sitting here trying to figure you out, and the way that you promote the competitive eating circuit and your peers is amazing. It's great. It's very wrestler-esque, but you're very humble, yet you find ways to put yourself over, but amongst your peers. It's very, very good. But you kind of sidestep a lot of your personal questions, the personal life stuff. And I remember I've interviewed Chestnut a couple times and Stoney a couple times too, I think. And I want to say they did the same thing. It's like you guys don't really talk about your personal life all that much. It's all about business. And you kind of all are like hustlers, which is not a bad thing. We all got the hustle in us, but you're all hustlers to an extent. So now with the internet and technology, you use the opportunity in the competitive eating for your YouTube channels, which is great. I don't blame you at all. I'm just trying to figure it out. There's something about you that's mysterious, and I'm trying to figure it out.
That I appreciate. So for me, people can find me at crazylegsconti.com. I have written stuff that I love people to read, but the fact of the matter, you bring up an interesting point, which is I would say this is my ethos. You have to have outward humility, but you have to have inner hubris. Because if you don't have inner hubris, you're not going to succeed at whatever you do in life. You have to believe in yourself. So, am I sidestepping my accomplishments because they pale in comparison to other eaters at the table? Possibly, but then I sometimes forget. And then I realize what a unique scenario it is to be able to do this. I love traveling. So an upcoming contest after the Nathan's Famous Hot Dog Eating Championship is sponsored by the Cross Points Church in Alabama. I've only been to Floribama because I took a U-turn before a Rouse's Crawfish Eating Contest. So I'm going to Madison, Alabama in August. It's banana pudding. So for me, I love banana pudding. I rank, everybody goes chocolate pudding. I'm like, it's garbage. Everybody goes vanilla pudding. I'm like, super boring. I'm tied butterscotch and banana pudding. I know they're different formats because banana pudding has vanilla wafers, but I cannot wait to eat as much on a Friday night. And I'll be traveling with Pat Deep Dish Bertoletti. He's an incredible eater, but I'm going to go to Huntsville. I'm going to enjoy a city I've never been to. I'm going to eat in front of thousands of people of a dessert that's guilt-free calories. Can I beat Deep Dish? I might, because my love of banana pudding is pure, even though he's got a greater skill set than I do at this point in my career. Why wouldn't we just enjoy the moments we live in? So a big mantra that I had in 2021 was, we can look back nostalgically. We can't go back. We can future plan for occasions of celebration and tragedy because we know they're going to happen. But what we should do is stay as present as possible. And that's kind of carried over. But I'd be honest, in 2022, my new mantra is be like Bill Murray. He's the human, not his characters. He seems like a bon vivant. He has a good time everywhere he goes. I like to think of myself as the same. So if that helps frame it for you, Jason, if you find me online, I don't have a staff. I got 3 typewriters. I'll write you the letter. But to be honest, you can find me in real life, whatever this reality is. Then that's where I'm at best. And I love talking competitive eating. I love talking food. A quick story about food is when we travel, we can't eat before the contest. It's a lot of protein shakes. It's a lot of preparation. I actually for a hot dog qualifier, for a meat qualifier. I eat a week of ramen or Japanese. This year I did udon. That's in honor of Takeru Kobayashi, because it's voluminous food that kind of stretches you out, but also is easily digestible. And it connects me to another human who's just done all he can in competitive eating. But when we're on the road, people want to tell us, you got to have this. So I was on, I did 49 Crystal hamburgers, the Southern Slider. By Joey ate 103, so I got lapped in that contest too. And then we were on Beale Street, and they said Dwyer's. Dwyer's has 100-year-old grease. Every time they moved locations, the police transferred it. You got to have Dwyer's. So I said, all right, I'm going. I'm there, and everybody's like, you order a triple burger, a quadruple, they flatten them. I'm like, I just want one. They're like, no, you got to have. And I'm like, this is my 50th burger of the day. Just give me one burger. I'm going to eat it. But it's 50 burgers in 24 hours. So you have these experiences that are unique. But yeah, I'd say, check out MajorLeagueEating.com. We end the summer in Buffalo, New York, the greatest bar food city in America. Drew Serzer, the Wing King. We do the Buffalo Wing Festival, which is 2 events. We start the summer off with the Nathan's Famous Hot Dog Eating Contest, which is on ESPN. The women will be on ESPN Live. The men will be on ESPN News Live, and then it'll replay on ESPN after, because there's Wimbledon, which is some kind of sport with rackets. Is it like croquet? I have not really followed that sport.
Easy. You're talking to a tennis player here. Easy.
But, so there you go. And then it's an amazing kind of journey. So 2022, we have new contests, new foods, and I really do enjoy this sport.
Nate, what would be great maybe for the next podcast in Pours is we do a end of the night eating competition. Like, remember like the days downtown Orlando when we'd go get Planet Pizza, or a hot, anything that you would eat, when Crazy Legs, you're talking about Crystal Burgers back in college, we would make the trip, come back, go through Crystal. We get some, mini cheese pups or whatever they were called, and large Dr. I mean, like the worst possible food you could put in yourself.
Jason, for everybody on the call, what would be the food they would choose to have your gang eat?
I don't know, Nate, go ahead.
I would probably eat like those little mini corn dogs.
Mini
corn, little corn, yeah.
Don't do anything mini on the circuit. Mini just seem like, why would you mini in life? I mean, but corn dog. The corn dog record is held by Rich the Las Vegas Locust Lefevre. He ate 9 full-size corn dogs in 5 minutes. So that would be a tough one. You have to deal with the stick. It's a debris food. All right, who's next?
Debris food. That's good. Brandon.
I'd probably eat shrimp fried rice.
Nice. Okay, so rice, we've done jambalaya in 2 different contests.
Ooh.
Rice is very difficult because they require a spoon. In the old days, you used to be able to bring your own spoon, but a guy named Dale, the Mouth from South Boone, brought like a gardening shovel, and he dug in, he threw it in his face, he sprayed Sonia and me, didn't pay for our dry cleaning bill, and he ended up having to step aside because it was granular. So we have an EMT at every contest. He got disqualified in the first round. So from then on, the Major League Eating has to give you a utensil. So with a bowl contest, you'd be allowed to hold the bowl, but you could not tilt it 45 degrees. You'd want to be shoveling the food in. So yeah, that would be an interesting one to see, but your face would be obscured by the bowl. So you'd be wondering what your fellow competitors would be doing.
Interesting. Never even thought about that. Jill?
What about like pounds of boiled peanuts?
Okay. So
I've been eating those all week at the beach. That's why I say it.
Are shelled or unshelled? Because the issue becomes in boiled peanuts, they're shelled, right? They're the
Right.
right. So New Orleans or Florida. And believe me, I'm sure you could start your own YouTube channel, or maybe Vimeo of you just at the beach eating boiled peanuts. But
That's me right now.
all right, perfect. So let me know when it goes live. I'll become some subscriber.
I'll get on the Instagram story later.
So what you would do is you would pinch those and you'd push the 2 nuts out into your mouth, and then you'd go to the next one. So when I lost to Hungry Charles Hardy in Alaska in spot shrimp, he told me he had visualized and he's the godfather of competitive eating, he visualized flipping cards. So in that one, you'd actually be using kind of a reverse extruder motion to try to pop those out. In contests, it'd be a weighed food, but you'd still be doing the same. You wouldn't be allowed to eat the shells. And
Right.
that your hand motion would get exhausted. It wouldn't be your jaw strength because they're boiled and soft. But that one you'd really have to work on just working one dominant arm and doing the same motion over and over for 10 minutes, which is a lot, maybe like prom night or dating in the modern era.
Well, Jill, we're going to start your YouTube channel called Jill Does Nuts. And I'm sure
I think I need to make it an OnlyFans.
I think we can profit off that somehow. So for me, I've got two. One, personally, I love shrimp, and I think that would be fun. Same process as you're squeezing it out of the tail. But back to the boiled peanuts, one would be fun. One that would be fun would be edamame, because you're sliding it out, and then you can easily check if you've got an empty, sack or whatever the hell they're called.
Right. Yeah. Well, Jason, here's what I'd say. You don't have to wish. You don't have to dream for one day. Every December, Major League sponsors with St. Elmo's Steakhouse in Indianapolis the World Shrimp Cocktail Eating Championship.
Really?
Now, if you've ever been to that restaurant, their shrimp cocktail is famous because the horseradish sauce that they include with it is more potent than anything. Now, I'm generally anti-condiment, even though I support Joey Jaw's Chestnuts condiment line. In that contest, which I've done twice, and it's on Measure Street, so it's before the Big Ten football game. So it's usually two huge football schools. It's outside in December in Indianapolis. The first year we did it, I'm eating next to Joey, and we each had fair totals. But I turned to him, I said, how did you do that? He's like, I couldn't even tell how many shrimp cocktail were in my hand because they were a slushy snowball of shrimp cocktail. He's since done 25 servings. I've been back to that contest. If I can go in December, and you could go too, you could sign up with Major League Eating, Jason. I'd love to have you at that contest because it's one of the few, not just capacity. These are delicious non-shelled shrimp cocktails, so you don't have to de-shell. But the horseradish sauce does something to your system that you are internally overdosing on a sinus cleanser. It's going to loosen up every internal sphincter except one, hopefully, so you don't need to wear an adult diaper. But St. Elmo's does an incredible contest every year. We can get you out there for your
I love food. I'm a griller. I like to cook. I'm not a big eater. I wish you all nothing but the best, but if I eat an overabundance of food, it sticks with me for weeks. I wish I knew what you guys did because none of you are overweight. You all are, fairly decent shape, but you stuff your faces with food all the time. It's crazy.
Well, I can give you a little hint. If it's going to stick with you, I did get to write for a book that Samantha Edis edited called How to Do Things Faster. And she asked me to write a short essay on how to get rid of a stomach ache. And that's what you're talking about, an overindulgence as a casual diner. It's basically the same thing we do in competition. The liquid doesn't count towards our total, but we try to create a log flume-like ride from our mouth, esophagus into our lower intestines and out the other end digestively. So if you overeat, what you're going to want to do is switch to electrolyte-laden, non-carbonated beverages because they're going to help flush your system. People make the mistake. If they go carbonated, that's causing the powder keg factor. That's going to push it up and out the other end, which is never pleasant. And the one rule we have in competitive eating is you can leave it figuratively on the table. You can't leave it literally on the table. If you have a reversal of fortune, an urge contrary to swallowing, in particularly volcanic instances, we call it Elvis has left the building. We don't use the P word or the V word. That's going to be out. You're disqualified. You lose thousands of dollars in prize money. You won't see it on July 4th because these are the top eaters and they don't want it to happen. But for you, if you grill, eat a ton, figure out your beverage and then just keep getting that down until you can clear your system and move on to a salad or dessert. Everybody's got room for dessert though.
Oh yeah. That strawberry shortcake thing, you had my heart at that, man. That's the deal right there. All right. Well, you are fascinating. I can't thank you enough for coming on. I wish you nothing but the best. There would be nothing cooler than to see Crazy Legs Conti on Monday, 4th of July, win the Nathan's annual 4th of July hot dog eating contest. And afterwards, when being interviewed, I couldn't have done it without the Bailey Show podcast. I mean, that's what I'm looking for.
That's what you're looking for. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. At Ruby's on the Boardwalk, which is the first of 2 after parties that we sponsor. I like beer. I'm allowed, I have to switch to whiskey to try to get down the digestives. But that first beer, it's going to be a Miller Lite, my second favorite beer in the world behind National Bohemian Natty Bo. I'm raising it to the Jason Bailey Show, to everybody who was on today, because it's helpful. It's helpful to me to think about these things, to get outside my comfort zone. So that Miller Lite, I'll be holding it skyward towards the sand, the surf, the beach, away from competitive eating, away from, and that's going to the Jason Bailey Show. I'll be raising that toast. I promise you that.
Well, we appreciate that. And I hope you win, because you're a great guy. And this is very exciting. Nate, every year when this comes around, when we're doing the radio show, we couldn't wait to get one of the competitive eaters on, because they're always great guests. So thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, thank you all. Eat all you can.